Back where the conflict was with the Japanese, the 4th Marine Division had overrun most of the Kahg-mahn Peninsula by the night of D+10. The shoreline cliffs provoked sobering thoughts in a young officer in the 24th Marines. We were close to the northern shoreline of the peninsula, and right there the Japs had dug a big emplacement. They hadn't had time to finish it, but we could see that it was situated so as to fire right down the beach line. Any troops landing on that beach would have received a terrible enfilading fire from this gun position. Not far from the emplacement were the guns that had been destined to go into it. Huge, 5-inch, dual-purpose naval guns. They were deadly things, and I was glad the enemy had never gotten them into action. Now they lay there on their wooden skids, thickly coated with grease, wrapped in burlap. Impotent. This unfinished state of the Japanese defenses was, in fact, a critical factor in the final American victory on Saipan. The blockading success of far-ranging submarines of the U.S. Navy had drastically reduced the supplies of cement and other construction materials destined for elaborate Saipan defenses, as well as the number of troop ships carrying Japanese reinforcements to the island. Then the quick success of the Marshall's campaign had speeded up the Marianas thrust by 3 months. This was decisive, for one prisoner of war later said that, had the American assault come 3 months later, the island would have been impregnable. The 4th Marine Division encountered more than cane fields in the Kahg-mahn Peninsula. The cliffs near the ocean were studded with caves. A 20-year-old private first class in Company E, 2nd Battalion, 23rd Marines, Robert F. Graff, described the Marine system for dealing with these and the others that were found all through the bitter campaign. The firepower was intense, and we were working our way up to where the shots originated. Quite often there would be multi-cave openings, each protecting another. Laying down heavy cover fire, our specialist would advance to near the mouth of the cave. A satchel charge would then be heaved into the mouth of the cave, followed by a loud blast as the dynamite exploded. Other times it might be grenades thrown inside the cave, both fragment type which exploded sending bits of metal all throughout the cave, and other times white phosphorus grenades that burned the enemy. Also, the flamethrower was used, sending a sheet of flame into the cave, burning anyone that was in its path. Screams could be heard, and on occasions the enemy would emerge from the caves. Near the entrance, we would call upon the tanks, and these monsters would get in real close and pump shells into the opening. Graff went on to picture the use of flame-throwing tanks, the ultimate weapon for dealing with the enemy deep in his hideouts. He continued, "Some of the caves had artillery mounted on tracks that could be wheeled to the entrance, fired and pulled back, unobserved. There were caves with reinforced metal doors that protected them from our artillery. Perhaps a direct hit from a 16-inch naval gun could have blasted it open, but nothing else." A fellow rifleman from Graff's company told him this story. "You should go up and see the huge cave that I was just in. It was large, and contained a completely equipped operating room, all the medical equipment, surgical tools, etc. The tools were made from German surgical steel. When the battalion and regimental doctors were told about it, they almost went crazy over finding such excellent equipment. Each doctor wanted some tools for his use. These attacks on caves were a tricky business, because of orders not to kill any civilians who were also inside many of them, hiding from the fighting. Graff recounted his experiences further. "Throughout the campaign we were taking prisoners. Seldom were they Japanese soldiers, instead Korean and Chamorro laborers, both men and women, who mostly worked in the sugarcane fields and processing plants. Chamorros were natives of the islands, while the Koreans, of course, were brought over as forced labor. Approaching us, hands up, and smiling and bowing, the Koreans would say in understandable broken English, 'Me Korean, not Japanese.' Some Japanese civilians were also captured. The Japanese tradition was that the male members of the family were the dominant members. Several times when we tried to feed newly captured women and children first, the male would shove them aside and demand to be first for rations. A few raps to the chest with a rifle butt soon cured them of that habit. As the sick, scared, and often starving civilians would emerge from their hideouts, there were many pitiful scenes. One sad incident I recall was when a captured civilian Japanese woman came up to me. She was crying, and when she got close to me, she started hitting me on the arm and pointing to my pack. I did not know what she wanted until an interpreter came over and explained that she wanted some food and water for her dead child. She pointed to a wicker basket that contained her dead infant. I gave her what she requested, and she placed the food and water in the basket so that the child could have nourishment on the way to meet the baby's ancestors. Physical conditions of many were pitiful. Every illness that we had been briefed on was observed: leprosy, dengue fever, yaws, and many cases of elephantiasis. Most of them were skeleton thin, as they had no nourishment for many days. Many were suffering from shock caused by the shelling and bombing, and fright because they did not have the vaguest idea as to what we would do to them. Civilians caught in a war that was not of their making. One of the captured persons impressed Graf so very much that the memory was vivid many years later. A Japanese woman, obviously an aristocrat, probably a wife or mistress of a high-ranking officer, was captured. She was dressed in traditional Japanese clothing, a brilliant kimono, a broad sash around the waist, hair combed, lacquered, and spotlessly clean. Although, as Graf remarked, she knew not what her fate would be in the hands of us, the barbarians, she stood there straight, proud, and seemingly unafraid. To me, she seemed like a queen. Over on the west side of Saipan, the 2nd Marine Division had a memorable day on 25th June. Ever since the landing, the towering peak of Mount Tapo Chau had swarmed with Japanese artillery spotters looking straight down on every Marine move, and then calling in precisely accurate fire on the American troops. Now, however, in a series of brilliant tactical maneuvers, with a battalion of the 8th Marines clawing up the eastern slope, a battalion of the 29th Marines, then attached to the 8th Marines, was able to infiltrate around the right flank in single file behind a screen of smoke and gain the dominating peak without the loss of a single man. Meanwhile, back at Nah-foo-tan Point, the battalion of the 105th Infantry assigned to clean out the bypassed Japanese pockets had continuous problems. The official army account commented, "The attack of the infantry companies was frequently uncoordinated. Units repeatedly withdrew from advanced positions to their previous night's bivouacs. They repeatedly yielded ground they had gained. The stalemate came to a climax on the night of D+11. Approximately 500 of the trapped Japanese, all the able-bodied men who remained, passed undetected or sneaked through, as the army later reported, the lines of the encircling battalion. The enemy headed for nearby Aslito airfield, and there was chaos initially there. One P-47 plane was destroyed, and 2 others damaged. The Japanese quickly continued on to Hill 500, hoping to reunite there with their main forces. What they found instead was the 25th Marines resting in reserve with an artillery battalion of the 14th Marines. The escaping Japanese were finished off the following morning. On the front lines in the center of the island, General Jarman, now in temporary command of the 27th Infantry Division, took direct action that same day, D+11. An inspection by 2 of his senior officers of the near edge of Death Valley revealed that battalions of the 105th Infantry were standing still when there was no reason why they should not move forward. That did it. Jarman relieved the colonel commanding the 106th and replaced him with his division chief of staff. 19 other officers of the 27th Infantry Division were also relieved after the Saipan battle was over, although only one of them had commanded a unit in battle. While these developments were taking place in the upper echelons, the junior officers in the front lines had their own, more immediate daily concerns. As the author recalled, "I had worked out a pre-sleep routine which I followed every night without fail. Before I lay down, I would make careful mental notes of where the company command post, CP, was, and where my squad leaders' foxholes were. Then I would work out the rotation of the watches with my CP group. Next came a check of my carbine to make sure it was in perfect operating condition. When all this had been done, I'd lie down, adjusting my helmet to serve as a pillow. Last, and most important, was the placing of my weapons. My carbine lay across my body so my hand would fall naturally on the trigger. My combat knife was stuck in the ground where my right hand lay, and my grenades were carefully arrayed at my left hand. Then I'd drift off to sleep."